Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. In answering the question that is imposed, I'd like to say that like many other countries around the world, our own country is facing the prospect of significantly higher tariffs to the exports that we make to the United States. Our government is therefore in continued engagement with the United States to secure what we would term a mutually beneficial trade and investment deal. The Presidency and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition have sent representatives who are currently in the United States, who are preparing for the further formal negotiations with the United States government, which should be taking place in just a few days. They are meeting a number of stakeholders as they are in both New York and Washington, including representatives of the administration, legislators, business people, and a whole number of other people. It should be known that many other countries are doing the same to secure agreements with the United States government. The US is South Africa's second largest trading partner as a country. Our economic relations are strong, and these relations go back many, many years. Trade between our two countries has historically been complementary in nature. We buy many goods and services from the United States, such as petroleum, aircraft and parts, medical instruments, soybeans, motor vehicles, poultry, and pharmaceuticals. South Africa exports to the United States include our minerals, our agricultural products, pharmaceuticals, motor vehicles, and medical isotopes. South Africa is the biggest investor from the African continent into the United States, with 22 of our companies investing in areas like mining, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and food chains. More than 600 United States companies operate in South Africa through various investments. To advance our negotiation position, our government submitted a mutually beneficial trade and investment package on a basis of negotiations with the United States. This builds on the previous package, which was submitted on 20th of May. In addition to the proposal put to the United States, Cabinet has also endorsed our own country's economic package to assist our businesses. This includes measures that we're putting in place to support South African businesses that are affected by the tariffs. Government has decided that in response to the United States position on tariffs, South Africa should take this as an opportunity to diversify our export market platform for increased resilience and to facilitate the entry into alternative markets for affected exporters. As part of measures to assist companies to absorb the effects of tariffs and facilitate what I would call long-term resilience, the Localization Support Fund has made a commitment to support affected companies. We have initiated an export and competitiveness support program that will include working capital, plant and equipment facilities to address short to medium-term needs across all industries of those who are exporters. Working with industry, we are accelerating efforts to diversify export markets and enhance competitiveness to mitigate the economic impact of losing preferential trade access. A crucial part of this work is to make full use of the opportunities that are presented by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We're also looking at better using the buying power of local consumers, of businesses, and government to support local producers. South Africa is responding to the imposition of these tariffs by the United States by intensifying its own engagement with the US administration. We're working to stabilize diplomatic relations, and we are introducing a range of measures to make South African companies more resilient. We do believe that this is the best course we should take, and in a way it is double-pronged. We negotiate with the United States, but at the same time, we encourage our companies to use this as an opportunity to start seeking out other markets. And to enhance this, we're involved in various visits to other countries, trade missions, if you like. President, the deputy president, and ministers are scouring the world, going from place to place, country to country, seeking to open channels and markets for our South African products. Some areas we have not really fully exploited in the past, but we have now started doing so. A case in point, for instance, is Latin America. We have not, beyond just Brazil, gone full force into Latin America, and they are interested in dealing with us. Asia is also a huge market that is waiting. So is the Middle East. So this gives us a great opportunity to open up new markets, an opportunity that we are exploiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll now ask for supplementary question from Honorable J.S. Maliba, who's on virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, following Trump's tariffs on the country, our approach has been that of appeasement and almost tantamount to begging. You created an impression of us crawling on the floor and begging and cementing our place as a very junior partner to the US. You have juniorized this country and it has lost its status globally. We do this while countries such as China, Canada, and the EU announced retaliatory tariffs against the US. I know that we import finished products from US while we largely export our raw materials such as platinum, gold, and raw aluminium, all of which are central to the US economy. Instead of appeasing the maniac, why have we not stood firm and imposed own retaliatory tariffs against Trump while looking to open up trade with our BRICS partners and the rest of the countries of the Global South? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you. Should I go? Thank you.
Yes, President, you can go on.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, there are various options that countries can elect to respond to the unfair tariffs that have been leveled against, I would say, the world. A number of countries have sought to engage in negotiations with the US government, and some of those have been fairly large economies that are currently in negotiations with the United States. And we have chosen the route of engaging the United States. They said that they have a deficit, but we argue that they don't have a deficit, and that requires that we should actually sit down and negotiate these issues. And in sitting down, we've come to the conclusion that we will find good answers to be able to take matters forward. And let me say, our response has also been informed by engagement with our own private sector. Our own private sector as exporters as well as importers, have been very much involved in crafting the response that we have offered to the United States, including the trade union movement. And it's all very well to say what we should have done is to retaliate. And in retaliation, you've got to be absolutely clear whether you will be able to achieve precisely what you need to achieve. We believe that we are on the right course, a course that should end up with a mutually beneficial outcome. The United States is our second largest trading partner, accounting for hundreds of thousands of workers who are employed here. The 600 US companies that are doing business in South Africa employ many people, and it is the interests of these many people that we as a government have to take care of before we engage in a war that may not yield the results that we want. So if one wants to play to the gallery, one could embark on the type of option that Honorable Malema is talking about without knowing what outcome that option will have. Our option is informed by what we want to gain. And what we want to gain is to continue exporting to the United States as much as possible and to enable our companies also to invest in the United States, but to also get United States companies to invest in us. And we do have leverage. And our leverage has to do with, yes, the natural resources that we have, the minerals that we have, which the United States needs. The discussions that we are having now with the United States also revolve around that. The critical minerals that South Africa has and the capacity that we have to process those minerals with the energy backing that we have, which many other countries don't have, is something that we take to the table and use as leverage. So I'd like to say that it is a strategy that we have opted for, and a strategy of engagement, and a strategy which we believe will yield results, notwithstanding the fact that we are obviously dealing with a United States administration that at times is unpredictable and that at times just retaliates. And without being supplicants, without, going on bended knee, which we have never done and which we will never do. And we have said we will not be bullied. We will stand as a sovereign country and negotiate and get the best deal for South Africa. That's precisely what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Eso Armahumapilo.
Thank you very much, President, and we appreciate the extent to which strategic engagements are taking place with the U.S. on these tariffs. Now, the U.S. on its own, President, realizing that its trumpets of the tariffs are inflicting pain on them, they volunteered exclusion of some of the critical minerals from the initial list, which is an advantage for South Africa. So I want to check how, as South Africa, we can continue to deepen their own realization on the strategic tactical advantage that we have. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, the issue, as I said earlier, of the strength and the endowments that we have, which is critical minerals, is a matter that is firmly on the table as we are having these engagements now with the United States. And we have been, yes, exporting these to them on a tariff-free basis, whilst they had offered us a tariff-free entry through the AGOA offering or process. So therefore, in order to gain the advantage that we need for our own country, we are utilizing precisely this aspect of what they need most. In the end, we are saying we need to balance the books. What do they need most from us is what we put on the table for them to consider. And what do we need most from them? And in balancing these two issues, we then believe that we will be able to come up with a fairly well-balanced negotiation that goes beyond just what they are focusing on, imposition of a 30% tariff regime on us. We go to the United States negotiating table with a strong hand. We don't go with a weak hand. And our endowments, as you correctly say, is exactly what we take to the table. And the ability on our part to have those products processed here. But we obviously, in doing so, want to take it a step further. And we want to be able, and that's what we are insisting on, that even as we may well want to export the critical minerals, we want them to leave the shores of South Africa as finished products so that we beneficiate what we will finally sell to them. So that is the type of discussion that we are having with them, a proper engagement of two sovereign powers that are engaging for a fair deal outcome. And that is how we are proceeding with this now. Our people who are in the United States now are fully fired up with this type of approach, and the Minister of Trade and Industry and International Relations will be joining them, and they will be advancing those discussions. We are on the ground, and we are working the ground in the United States as we speak now. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. Mr. R. Smith.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Mr. President, as this question so rightly points out, a full spectrum of government responses is required to negotiate the best possible deal for South Africa in light of the USA's imposition of a 30% tariff on South African imports. Part of this response, which is your sole responsibility, is the appointment of a capable ambassador to represent our interests in Washington, D.C. Can you confirm to this House that South Africa's ambassador nominee to the United States of America will be a capable, skilled, and non-partial career diplomat and not another party political deployee?
Honourable President.
Yes. The appointment of South Africa's ambassador to the United States, which is soon to be finalized and made public, will be a person who is capable, a person who is sufficiently well experienced and sufficiently well versed in world views and world politics, and who knows the American market extremely well. That is the type of person that we are going to appoint. It's interesting that they themselves have over some time been mulling over who to deploy to South Africa. And indeed, we found that countries in these days, because the geopolitical situation has changed so much, are scratching their heads so much to find the most suitable people that they can deploy in various markets, and to get people with the necessary skills and know-how and experience and worldview. And that is the type of person that we are going to deploy to the United States as ambassador, as we also await them to bring their own, and as we also will be deploying a number of others to other markets and locales. So the answer to your question is yes, we will be appointing a well-versed and a well-rounded person who has the necessary skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm smiling. I saw members listening attentively, and I was wondering whether there may be some application here for such a position. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll now ask...
Madam Speaker, I must tell you that there have been a lot of applications, and some of them have come from this House.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Our last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Maimane.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. President. All of us as South Africans observed your meeting in Washington and can fully appreciate the fact that we are now in the realm where domestic policy impacts foreign policy. A general goes off to Iran and makes some significant statements on foreign policy. That general has had a global implication on the US relation with those who it does not deem its allies, of which Iran is one. I want to ask, Mr. President, if you could bring the nation into confidence as to, in the light of all of these tariffs and our low GDP growth from today, whether does South Africa in fact have military cooperations with Iran? No sanction was taken against the general who has spoken. And ultimately, are you of the view that our close relations with Iran have had any impact on our tariff impositions by the US and what your government's plan to respond to that issue? Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We do not have any military operations with Iran. Iran is one of the members of the BRICS. In fact, we held a BRICS summit yesterday online, and Iran was present, as were other countries like China, India, Ethiopia, Egypt, Brazil, and all others. So we are together members of BRICS, and in dealing with Iran, we deal with them also as a sovereign country that is dealing with the various issues and challenges as it is doing, like ourselves. And the general went to Iran on a predetermined visit, which was planned almost 2 years ago. And I had a long discussion with him, and we both agreed that the timing could have been managed differently. And he conceded that because of what is happening globally. And that in itself demonstrated to me, as he himself conceded, that the timing could have been different, and that what he said in Iran really was an expression of the continued relations that have existed between our two countries. And in the end, the relations we have no impact whatsoever, and should have no impact with our relations with other countries. And we respect and deeply respect the relations that other countries have with whoever in the world. And similarly, we say the same should obtain with us. There was a time when we were lambasted for even having any relationship with Russia, as it was involved in a war with Iran. And now of late, Honorable Maimane, nearly everyone comes to us and says, could you kindly impart a message to President Putin? And these are largely countries that had decided to shun Russia, to boycott Russia, and never want to have any discussions with them. And we've often said, do continue engaging with Russia. I remember very well when I went to the White House and met President Biden. And I said, do not disengage from talking to Russia, even as there is a conflict. And he said, can you please pass on a message to Russia, because you have historically had a relationship with Russia, because he said himself, we know that Russia was one of the only countries that supported your struggle as you were involved in a gigantic struggle against apartheid. I said, yes, they did support us, and we've continued to engage with them. And our engagement with them does not result in the abandonment of our own principles. We have principle, and they deal with us with great respect, with great honor, knowing very well that we are a sovereign state and we will not abandon our principles whatsoever. And now, many of them are then calling us and saying, can you please pass on this message to President Putin about the Ukrainian war so that we can find settlement? And this is done by nearly all of them, nearly all of them. And these are countries that criticized South Africa very harshly when the Ukraine-Russia war started. Now, of late, they become converts. They now come to us and ask us to pass on messages and to see how best we can work for peace. Now, the position we've always had is that we, in pursuing peaceful outcomes, will talk to all parties. We will talk to those who are belligerents in any conflict, and we will adhere to our principles, and our principles are to make peace, to make sure that there is peace in the world and all conflicts are resolved peacefully. So our standing as a country has been greatly enhanced. Much as others say our standing has been dashed, it has actually been greatly enhanced, as many countries want to talk to us and see how best we can get involved in settling the variety of conflicts around the world. So the Iranian case is a case in point, and we've been very clear in our dealings that they are principled, and we will always adhere to our own principles and values and never abandon those. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are now moving to the second question, question 14, that has been asked by Honorable M. Ntuli. Honorable Ntuli, unfortunately, has a family engagement and is not here physically, and has asked Honorable Mpapane to take the question on his behalf. The question is considering his State of the Nation address on 9 February 2023, in which he emphasized the creation of a state bank, which entails licensing the Post Bank. What measures is the government taking to support the Post Bank in acquiring its full commercial banking license, and whether the government has established the need to capitalize the Post Bank to ensure its commercial viability? Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Driving financial inclusion remains a national priority for us. When more South Africans, especially the South Africans who live in the rural areas and underserved communities, are able to access affordable banking and credit, we unlock entrepreneurship, support job creation, and stimulate growth in local communities. Now, financial inclusion also empowers youth and women-owned enterprises, but it also narrows inequality and builds resilience in households and communities as well. South Africa has a well-developed and competitive financial services sector, and in fact, one can say almost second to none on our continent. And it is one of those great attributes that investors also look out for to distinguish our market from many others. Our commercial banks, development finance institutions, cooperative banks, and new digital entrants all provide a range of financial products and services to small businesses and individuals. But of course, we want much, much more access by our people, particularly your small, medium enterprises, to have easy access to finance from these institutions. The Post-Bank Amendment Act was enacted to strengthen the diversity of our financial sector and to ensure a dedicated focus on underserved communities. The act was meant to establish a post-bank as a developmental state-owned commercial bank offering accessible financial services to all South Africans, but more particularly to South Africans who live in the rural areas. Whilst obtaining a banking license is an independent regulatory process, the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, as the representative shareholder and executive authority of the Post Bank on behalf of our government, is tasked with ensuring that the Post Bank receives the necessary support to obtain the banking license. Now, according to the Minister, the Post Bank has not yet fully met the conditions for a banking license, particularly around its card key management processes and the compliance with the prudential standards that are required. Its immediate challenge is to strengthen its governance to ensure compliance with prudential standards and to stabilize its own finances. Capitalization of the bank will be considered, as it must, once the Post Bank is granted authorization to operate as a bank, after which it has 12 months to raise the funding to become a registered bank. This will be determined by its business case, for which the Post Bank Board is responsible, and submitting the business case to government via the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. Now, these steps, Madam Speaker, are essential to ensure that the Post Bank obtains its banking license and is able to fulfill the vital mandate that it bears to promote financial inclusion for all. Now, I am sure and certain that these requirements should be met and will be met, and all that we need to focus on is the time frame through which the bank itself will be able to meet all these requirements. Now, I know that the board is at work to address all these matters, and as it is a financial services institution, the requirements are quite stringent. They are stringent because the Prudential Authority wants to protect the public when it comes to their money. And so therefore, those standards have been well set out, and it is now incumbent on the minister as well as on the bank to ensure that they meet all these standards. And once these standards are met, then the bank will be able to offer all the services as a registered entity. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable D. Mpapane.
Thank you very much, Honorable President, for the comprehensive response to this question. One of the measures that has enabled the Post Bank to obtain exemption in terms of the Banks Act to implement its commercial strategy and ensure its viability in the interim is the Master's Service Agreement with SASSA for the payment of social and SRD grants to beneficiaries. The Department of Social Development and SASSA has indicated that they will terminate the MSA agreement. The effect of losing the master service agreement with SASSA could place the bank at risk of insolvency and possibly going under liquidation, which could see the bank retrenching over 250 employees and not obtaining its full commercial license. What is government doing to avert the risks that are associated with this, with the termination of this agreement? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Now, according to SASSA, the agreement it had with the Post Bank no longer serves any purpose. And that is why that agreement is to be terminated. It is said that since the termination of cash pay points and other over-the-counter services at the post office, and the removal of the post office as a recognized grant payment channel, the agreement is no longer relevant. The department is, however, in discussions, and this has involved a multi-departmental type of discussion to try and forestall this whole fallout. In the end, your SASSA beneficiaries will not be affected because they will continue with their own accounts. But the operation of the post office itself is what is currently under discussion to ensure that we forestall the total collapse of the post office. Now, indeed, the Post Bank has to meet a number of requirements, and we have said that these should be met on an urgent basis so that we can see how best we begin to address the whole issue of capitalization. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Maodwe.
I will take the question. Thank you very much, Speaker. President, in terms of the statement released by the South African Reserve Bank on the 25th August, we know that the Post Bank is still a designated clearing system participant and not a fully fledged bank. Yes, we've heard you that we're in the process of establishing it as a fully fledged bank. But in 2018, we introduced a bank amendment bill in terms of which we proposed that the bank should be a fully fledged state bank. Further, we proposed that the public service bank be established using the asset base of the African Bank, which is largely owned by the South African Reserve Bank and the GEPF. While your party rejected the bill back then, and given your belated delays of the state bank, would you be in support of the sort of the interventions we proposed in the bank's amendment bill today in order to boost the capacity of the state to facilitate ease of banking and give it trust for the state-led banking services that prioritize development? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you. The issue of a state bank has been a topic of great discussion amongst all of us. And there is general agreement that there should be a state bank. The whole question is really how do we then move forward to put it together? And how do we put all the key elements, whether they reside in the Post Bank or whether the African Bank could be part of them. And we should remember that the African Bank has other shareholders who are not state entity parties, who are like your commercial banks. So all those entities now need to be properly synchronized to ensure that we do utilize whatever assets that there are to create a state bank. I do think that we have moved quite considerably closer to what we could finally emerge as a state bank. Of course, the key question is going to be capitalization, and if current assets that reside elsewhere can be put together and with whatever input the government can make, to set up a state bank, that will be the ideal outcome. So in the end, I do believe that a state bank is no longer a question of whether it will be set up or not. It is really the mechanics of how we go about setting up the state bank. That it will be done, in my view, is a foregone conclusion. It will be done. How we go about it and how quickly we move to set it up is the critical question. And it is a question that I believe is being addressed both by Treasury, by the central bank, and also a number of other entities as well as ministries. So a state bank is something that is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable MC Mafakane.
Mr. President, Post Bank requires about 7 billion to recapitalize and has no intention to privatize. It has gone 3 times to the National Treasury for help to capitalize. These requests were rejected. Considering that ministers sign performance agreements and are accountable to you, Mr. President, does your failure to ensure the capitalization of Post Bank represent a failure to anticipate at the signing into the law, the state bank, the risk factor associated with the viability of the state bank? When this decision, like many others, is not implemented, will you say that you are shocked and call for the citizens to provide an answer and solution as you normally do?
Thank you, Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I like your laughter on this. You know, when somebody laughs the way you are laughing, they know they are not telling the truth. But let me answer you directly. I am not shocked. Point number 1, I am not shocked. Point number 2, I am not asking South Africans to provide the answer. Now, once we've cleared those 2 questions, I should say that capitalization of the Post Bank is something that needs to be handled with the necessary care. Firstly, the fiscal challenges that we face are enormous. We don't have easy money lying around, but at the same time, what I said in my reply...
Honorable Klute, can you please switch off your mic?
What I said in my reply in chief was that there are quite a number of conditions that have to be met. Now, I should say that the progress that is being made in moving towards getting the Post Bank to become a properly registered bank is actually quite encouraging, because now there's a clear roadmap. And the roadmap is, from a governance point of view, the board must ensure that everything is well aligned, themselves as the people who are responsible for governance. And at the same time, they need to look at the financial viability of the bank itself. And once all that has been done, we will then be able to move to the whole question of capitalization, and then determine how that capitalization should happen. And it is then that the minister will come to this House and propose a capitalization amount and where the money should come from. That we want to move towards setting up the Post Bank as a registered bank is a given. And all we need to do is to ensure that all these other matters that are regulatory, that have to do with governance, and that have to do with financial prudency are all attended to. remembering that the Post Bank in the end is going to be managing public money. And we therefore ourselves need to be absolutely certain that this bank will operate in terms of the laws, in terms of the regulations that we have that govern banking in South Africa. So I do hope and I do believe that that will happen. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. Honorable Abrams.
Mr. President, last year the Post Bank was looted of 100 million rand of taxpayers' money. This after the Reserve Bank repeatedly warned of security vulnerabilities. This perpetuates the trust deficit between South Africans and government. Can the President tell South Africans why a state-owned bank will not become yet another VBS looting scheme? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The VBS saga has taught us a lot of lessons. There's a great desire amongst South Africans to have a state-owned financial services. And we know that those state-owned financial services will operate with a greater sensitivity to serve the interests of South Africans from a financial point of view. But at the same time, those entities need to operate in accordance with our very stringent financial regulatory framework. And the VBS, as you might recall, was not yet a registered financial institution. And that is why the type of mishap happened in the VBS. What we are seeking to do now is to forestall, to make sure that what happened, for instance, in VBS does not happen. And sometimes it becomes very frustrating for many of us that the government is not moving forward to set up these entities. And the frustration is something I can understand, but we must also understand that we've got to be absolutely careful because this is about managing public money. If you talk to any banker today, they will tell you that the regulatory framework in which they have to operate is governed by so many laws that keep them straight on the narrow path that make them be very careful in managing the money that comes from the public. So the assurances that one can give would be adherence to regulations and to the watchful eye of the Prudential Authority, which is part of the South African Reserve Bank, who watch every bank so closely. And they watch it so closely to a point where no one can serve as a director of a bank without being approved by the Reserve Bank. And the whole process of scrutiny, of ensuring that everybody who serves on a bank is a proper person, is quite stringent. And we need to thank them for that. And that is why our financial services architecture is so well respected in the world. So when the Post Bank finally gets that license, it will join that league of well-regulated bodies and well-managed bodies to ensure that things like fraud and the disappearance of money does not happen willy-nilly. So we should trust our regulatory framework and know that once we accede to that level of approval, a lot will be much better and safer. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. We now move to the third question coming from Honorable G. Bichalakis, the Chief Whip of the DA. The question is about whether the National Dialogue is intended to assist the government to achieve its priorities of economic growth, poverty reduction, job creation, lowering the cost of living and building a capable state. If not, what is the position in this regard? If so, what are the relevant details? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The outcomes of the national dialogue will in the end be determined by the citizens of our country. They are not going to be determined by the president, nor any one of us sitting here. National dialogue should be seen as a structured process where the citizens of our country, together with political actors, civil society, and other stakeholders, come together to deliberate on the future of their own country, to debate on the South Africa they want. Its importance, therefore, lies in several interconnected dimensions. The national dialogue is aimed at giving ordinary South Africans a voice to articulate precisely the South Africa that they wish to have and how they participate in crafting the solutions for the country. Now, crafting the solutions sometimes is seen as privy for the leadership. And that is why when I addressed the national dialogue, I asked the people of South Africa a number of questions that they should also participate in answering. And a wave of criticism has come my way when I sought to elicit real participation so that as South Africans, we must ask ourselves those very important questions. And we must, yes, as ordinary South Africans must ask, why does the tap not have water? They must ask us as their public representatives because the taps don't have water in many places. And they must, they must then say, you know,
Order, honorable members.
The taps don't have water because there is either corruption, there are water tanks, and we see it in our own communities, and be able to point out exactly what is happening on the ground themselves. Now, that is the opportunity that South Africans are going to be having or given to address these issues. Now, over the next few months, South Africans from across the length and the breadth of the country will be engaging in conversations on the issues that concern them deeply. The first National Convention, which was held from the 15th to the 16th of August at UNISA, was attended by over 1,000 delegates representing more than 200 organizations. Now, that was quite a crowd of people, not Mickey Mouse at all. The convention brought together around 30 different sectors in society, ranging from business to labor to traditional leaders and faith-based organizations. There were organizations of women, youth, students, academics, emerging businesses and older persons, military veterans, persons with disabilities, and unemployed persons.
Order, Mr. President, if you can take a seat. Advise there's the question on the platform. Honorable Skosana, what is your question?
Ngiyabonga kakhulu Mgcinihlalo somlomo.
Is it a point of order?
Ngithi ke a point of order, the president is misleading the house.
Honorable member, under which rule are you raising your point of order?
Rule number 85.
No, honorable member. Can you please close your mic so that we can continue? Thank you, Honorable President.
I was enjoying the rest. Honorable Speaker, also among the represented organizations were people in the media, in sports, arts and culture, justice, peace, governance, democracy, and human rights. That was the collection of people who were at the National Convention. In many ways, the National Convention reflected the broad and vibrant diversity of our society. Whether people like it or not, that was the reality that was represented at the National Dialogue, at the convention rather. The first convention was a great success by any count, where delegates endorsed the need for the value of a national dialogue. The convention agreed on key themes for the national dialogue, understanding that citizens will be able to raise any issues that they want. The 9 broad themes that were identified were building a dynamic, inclusive economy that will create jobs and improve livelihoods, tackling crime and corruption, winning the future through education and a healthy nation, fixing the state and making the constitution work for our people, building South African values, culture, and strengthening our social fabric, advancing gender equality and ending gender-based violence and femicide, dealing with intergenerational trauma and healing, promoting environmental justice, advancing land and mineral rights. Now, delegates to the first National Convention expressed their support for a representative steering committee to drive the national dialogue process. Now, over the next 3 weeks, organizations involved in the 32 identified sectors have been meeting amongst themselves to nominate their own representatives to the steering committee. Now, these nominations will now be compiled and collated by the eminent persons group to ensure inclusivity and representativity before the steering committee is constituted. Once established, the steering committee will work together with the interministerial committee chaired by the deputy president and with the advice of the eminent persons group to coordinate public dialogues across the country. And let us be clear, the steering committee will be led by the citizens of our country, giving credence to our intention that this must be citizen-led, whilst government's role is that only of a facilitator. The purpose of the dialogue that will take place at local level and within various sectors is to develop sustainable and effective responses to the challenges that the country faces. It is expected that this process will result in the social compact that we all yearn for, that outlines the roles, the responsibilities of each sector of society in building the South African nation. Now, while South Africans still have to have their say, it can be anticipated that the national dialogue will make a significant contribution to economic growth, to poverty reduction, to job creation, lowering the cost of living, and building a capable state, the very priorities that we outlined over and over again in this House. Now, citizens feel ownership over national decisions when they are directly themselves involved in shaping them, complementing the important role that is played by elected representatives. Involving the people directly enhances the process of developing a shared vision for the country of our future. Now, what happened? What happened when the National Convention was held was quite a moving process where we had so many South Africans expressing a deep yearning to be in conversation with each other. And it is something that we should never dismiss out of hand. And it is not it is not something that can be called a misnomer. It is something that happened, and that is going to lead to the holding of a national dialogue through the length and the breadth of the country. And if one just looks at the number of organizations that were represented, they represent the entirety of our society in South Africa, of our citizenry. So let us give this whole process a chance, an opportunity to progress, rather than stand on the sidelines and criticize. And as they say, it's better to be inside the tent rather than to be outside and doing something inside the tent. So let us all be in this national dialogue tent. It is almost like a caravan. It is moving. And we call on everyone to be part of it. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, President. Honorable Michaelis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, the national dialogue is a failure no matter how you sell it. Now, listen, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, Steve Biko Foundation, Chief Albert Luthuli Foundation, Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation, F.W. de Klerk Foundation, Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation, and the Strategic Dialogue Group, and many others withdrew. Mr. President, how do you plan to get the entire country behind what results from it if you couldn't even get the entire country in the room to begin with?
Thank you, Honorable President.
Now, I do not want to get into the politics of who withdrew and who stayed in, because if I get involved in that, and let me just say this is not the president's dialogue. The people of South Africa called for the dialogue. And then they said it has to be convened for the first meeting by the president, because embedded in our constitution, there is that notion that when we talk about nation building, it is the president who should lead the process. Now, as often happens.
Order, honorable members, can we lower our voices?
Now, as often happens, and you're talking here to somebody who was unfortunately involved in a number of other dialogues. You know, we had the peace process in our country when the country was dogged with a lot of violence. A number of South Africans got together and said we should have a peace summit. And when that was held, a number of other people did not participate. But a peace pact was framed, and it helped to bring down the levels of violence in the country. When we were moving forward to democratize our country, I remember very clearly we held a convention for a democratic future, which brought together a number of organizations. Many others did not participate. That convention for a democratic future helped to craft the path towards negotiations. When the multi-party negotiations happened, starting with CODESA, a number of other entities that did not participate, but it still resulted in the caravan moving forward. When the multi-party negotiations happened for a new constitution, a number of parties did not participate. And these were parties of great weight, of real big influence. They didn't participate, but the caravan moved on and finally produced the constitution that we now have. And the process of drafting that constitution was so broad and so inclusive. The drafters went throughout the country to involve a number of South African citizens. So it often happens, we're experienced with this, that when national processes happen, there will be those who will decry that they have not been included, and there will be those who say this is irrelevant, and there will be those who say we don't want to participate, but the majority always participate, and they move the process forward. So in this case, I am hopeful, much as, truth be told, much as I now have nothing to do with the dialogue, because the dialogue is now being led by a steering committee of which I am not a member. This dialogue is now going to be taken forward by those people who believe that this process should be theirs. And all we will do as government will play a supportive role of financing their various activities. And in many ways, that caravan is going to move on, whether people like it or not. And those who may have an inclination to now want to be part of it and join in, I'm told that they will always find the door open. And the caravan will stop for a while to allow them to climb on, and then it will continue moving on. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.